Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to a morning practice. I'm Simon Greer. That's Tom Scott, and this is Isaac Slade. We're going to introduce ourselves in a moment, but I just wanted to start by saying we started this morning practice show about a week ago. Felt like it was an urgent moment because all of our routines were totally upside down. Like if you're used to going to work or showering and going to the office or taking the kids to school, that's been blown out the window. And so we don't have that. And we were hearing that people were desperate for, like, the anxiety is so high, the uncertainty is so high. What can I do to manage my own self each day? Like, what is a routine or a practice I can develop? And Tom and I have had practices, we're not teachers of practice, but like just through the ups and downs of life, we've come to rely on our practices. And so we've been doing the show for about a week. We've been inviting on great people like you, Isaac, to share your own journey and your own practice and to offer it to people. So it's a community for where people can practice during the show, where we talk about why we practice, not just how. And we're agnostic about which practice. So we also invite people on to share what their practices are so we can all learn and deepen our practice. So that's the point of the show. Again, I'm Simon Greer. Tom, do you want to say a word to introduce yourself?
Well, yeah, I'm Tom Scott, co-founder, chairman of the Nantucket project. I was with a different set of people. We were talking about the biology of the disease and how it's affecting the economy. And one of the things we were talking about was just the nature of information overload, which is this time we live in. And, thankfully there are these mosaic moments that sort of stay with me. And Isaac, yours was one that I experienced at TNP. And so, there's just incredible value in that. So I'm when we thought, like, who might we want to talk to about this? You were one of the first guys on the list. So thanks for coming.
Awesome.
So for folks who don't know, Isaac Slade, the lead singer and songwriter for the Fray, I got to meet him last year at the Nantucket project as Tom was referencing, in a moment of real, like, depth and poignancy on the stage under the tent. He offered a song that was really moving, I think, to, like, the way music can move an audience. Isaac moved, the 600 plus people there, but he also shared a lot about his own journey and his own practice. And it's really important, I think, for us in doing this show, that this isn't just about, like, oh, I have a morning practice, like I put on my yoga clothes and I, like, zen out or something, bliss out on the beach. Like, our idea is that these practices help us survive and thrive. They're actually like, how do we deal with the demons in us and the overwhelming bombardment of stresses that come at us? That's why we have practices. Right? It's not like an indulgence. It's how to survive, how to make the most we can out of our lives. And so Isaac shared a practice with us. So by way of introduction, we're going to go to this 2-minute clip of Isaac, and then we'll let you introduce yourself. So if you want to play it, Tom.
I want you to start thinking about some of your worst moments. Some of the ones that almost did you in. Think about the circumstance and what happened. Think about what you wanted to happen, and think about what ended up happening. And think about what it did to you. I want you to imagine your body is an airplane. Maybe, I'm talking to myself here, but maybe the dashboard is screaming, like, alerts, and the cabin is filled with smoke and it's feeling bad. And then just kind of try to settle into that pilot seat. You are your body, but you're also a pilot. Just put one breath of distance between your body and that pilot that you are. And you start opening your eyes if you want. You can keep them closed, but just start coming back to some of your success. Not the watch on your wrist, but the moments that you will take with you. The ones that people will tell stories about you. Think of the people that love you. Zoom way out to why you're here and what you're doing with your life. And start deepening your breath. Start coming to your room. Start thinking about all of your flaws, all of the things you want to change, and just let that be who you are.
It's pretty beautiful.
I could watch it over and over again. Isaac, just say a word about that piece and about yourself, and then we'll jump into our daily gratitude practice.
Great. Yeah, I think I used to have a different practice than I do now, and I wouldn't have called it a practice. I would just have called it how I live. And I think it, if it hinged on anything, it would have been around things like keeping it together and getting as much approval as I could from that, from that best effort of composure. And I think as my band rose in prominence and as I started getting a lot of the things I wanted and realizing it was, nowhere near enough for like a real piece, that system just fell apart spectacularly. And I had to find something truer and deeper. And, if I have a practice, I don't know if I'd call it that, but if I do have a practice, I think it hinges more on getting present with myself, and then getting present with reality, and then getting present with the situation and the people after that. And then just like letting love flood all of those things, myself, the situation, the people. And that has flipped my whole game. It's taken it out of a game and put it into a being with myself, being with my people, being with the email that I'm trying to write, a difficult one or a boring one or an easy one, or the being with a crowd that I'm in front of. And that's changed everything for me. I think that took me out of perform, here's my real self and here's the self I'm going to show you. And then it put it into, just being rather than doing.
Thanks. So, I couldn't, you said beautifully, I think the spirit of why we do these practices and why we've been sharing them. So if you don't mind joining us, let's just start with a brief gratitude practice. And I say this every day, it's not fancy. Like gratitude sounds so fancy. It's just like, what am I thankful for? What am I grateful for in my life? So I'll kick it off and then turn it to you guys. What I wrote down today was, and this may sound like different than what I've done some other days, I work on another project with a group of corrections officers, so guys who work in prisons. And it's a 24/7 security environment. So while we're social distancing, they have to go to work and be in close quarters with a very crowded community of people. And so I just wanted to express gratitude to Andy, Byron, Ray, Carrie, Caleb, Brent, Kyle, Laura, Ed, and LA, the group of corrections officers who I know the best and think about how they're going to work every day and bringing risks home to their family and doing their job the best they can as the professionals they are. So feeling grateful for kind of the work that goes unnoticed a lot. So that's what's on my mind. Isaac, do you want to share something?
My kids go to this amazing Montessori school here in the Seattle area, and they have missed it so badly during this time. And the teacher set up a Zoom call for everybody today. So we were sitting next to our kids while they Zoomed with 20 other little kids, and hearing what they do for the first time. I were never in that room when they do whatever it is they do. They have this morning practice they do every time they're there. It's called Circle, and they sit down, and then she sings and they echo, and then they go around the room and each person says something. And I could feel my kids' nervous systems just like chilling out because they have this routine. And it was so cool to think about having that right before this talk with you guys, because my kids need a morning practice. unbeknownst to me, they had a morning practice and they haven't had it. And now I know a little bit more about what it is. And then right at the end, the teacher said, okay, now it's the time where you go do your concentrated work, or whatever phrase she used. So go get your art supplies ready and go do it. And, you know, in dark moments or boring moments, I'm just like, go get the iPad. I got to do dishes. And watching how they reacted to the teacher, they knew exactly what she meant. And then they just jumped right in, and they're still making Play-Doh on the counter. They're so curious. They're so into it. It's like, I'm so grateful for people around us in our communities that know our kids and know essentially how to do what we're talking about doing with ourselves and with other adults for our children.
That's great. Thanks, Ozzy. Tom?
So I'm going to call out Gordon and Luli Gund today. If you don't know Gordon Gund, he is a man who went blind many years ago and was instrumental in creating the first FDA-approved genetic cure for any disease, in which he cured the blindness in now many, mostly younger people. But one person in particular who we got to know, a guy named Yannick Douay, who's now probably 21 and in college, and he's been able to see since the age of 9, and he couldn't see up until the age of 9. Amazing. And Luli passed away last week, unrelated to the corona. Anyway, and so you would think at this moment, which is a difficult one on our organization for a whole variety of reasons. We're in the live event business. It is not easy right now. He has been so helpful to me. That family has been so helpful to me, including today, including yesterday. And they are beautiful people. So I'm very grateful to them.
Thanks to both of you. So we'll shift now from gratitude to journaling. And again, journaling's not fancy. It's just the idea that we grab a journal, if you keep one, or just a piece of paper and a pen, and we'll take 2 minutes. I'll time it, just 2 minutes to write. And you can write about reflection on yesterday or an intention for today, or you can write about anything, but just take 2 minutes to jot some thoughts down. All right, you can finish up the sentence you're writing and we'll come back together. one of you like to share something you sketched out in your journal? Volume, Tom.
We'll cut that. We'll make that clean. I am a little uncomfortable to say this, and I'm sharing that because it says a lot about me, but it also says a lot about the world. And that is, I believe in God. I mean, I believe in something. I will not go into all the detail just because I could speak for too long, but I do. And I was thinking about it in that moment. And in that moment, I wrote that thing. And reflecting in that thing, I wrote about the uncomfortability I would have in sharing with you guys afterwards or with anybody else watching that I do believe in a God, but I do. And I'm not going to say I know I'm right. I'm not going to say I'm positive, but I am going to say I find that that's a really important part of my life, like really, really important part of my life. Promise I won't push it on you, but it's a big part of who I am. It is.
Thanks. Thanks for being willing to share it.
Yeah.
What about you?
I wrote about compassion. I think my personality is kind of oriented around justice, and it doesn't really lend itself to curiosity. If anything, it lends itself to a gavel, maybe two gavels, making pronouncements. So compassion has always been really elusive, especially like living with my wife. She's like walking compassion and mercy and empathy. So I was just writing about maybe another 38-year-old out there somewhere. Maybe he's a father of two. Maybe he's sick, and you know, he's thinking about, you know, Christmas, and when his biggest concern was, you know, shopping for presents. I'm just trying to like put myself in his shoes and kind of connect with him. I feel healthy right now, and I know so many people are not. So I'm just trying to connect with that.
Thanks. It's interesting. I was the word that I wrote that I just sort of then riffed on was about how so much is being swept away. Like I had a full schedule. Like I would travel and go places and do things and meet with people, and it just wiped away. And that there's a lot of life is getting wiped away too. Like I'm not trying to be cute or quaint or naive about things being swept away. Like there's loss. It can be brutal when things get swept away. And then there's also the way that like this show emerged because so much else had been swept away. We're like, well, why don't we try to do this and find an anchor? And so I was just jotting down some thoughts about the power of things being swept away and the tragedy of that, and also where life can come from it. So that's what was on my mind. So our practice on this show is we do gratitude, meditation, journaling, which lets us do some reflection and some intention setting, and we finish by talking about how we're of service to others and how we try to be of service. But I want to pause in that routine and ask you, Isaac, like, do you have a morning practice, or you referred earlier to like maybe you wouldn't call it a practice? I'm curious, like, how do you kick your days off to get off on the right foot and, you know, be the person you want to be at home and out in the world?
Yeah, well, I think maybe a key component is coffee. That's my start and my finish. And I'm passionate about it, and my wife makes fun of me all the time because I am doing my French press exactly 4 minutes every day. But I get up early, partly because my kids get up really early. So I'm up at 6, and mentally, I noticed I can't really go for more than 3 or 4 hours without kind of sitting quiet by myself and kind of recentering. So I organized my whole day around 4-hour chunks. So I took the 24-hour period and I called the 2 sleeping chunks, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And then I just have like I think of it, I call it recentering, or it's a pause, or it's a meditation. And I do it at 6, I do it at 10, I do it again at 2, and then I do it again at 6, and kind of before I shift back into family mode. So the morning starts with grabbing my phone, brushing my teeth, and getting the coffee going, and then I'm jumping right into 30-minute if I can. Sometimes it's 15 minutes. Sometimes it's like 2 minutes, but really just getting something, as close to 6 a.m. as I can to really orient myself around, something more solid than my news feed or my inbox, or, because all that stuff, if you orient around that, man, I'm on my heels the rest of the day. So once I get kind of oriented up, kind of get my compass pointing towards what I wanted to point at, I'll kind of ease on into breakfast and jump on into my work and stuff. And then probably 9:30, 9:45, I realize what time it is, and I'm usually sprinting on some email or some phone call or some task, and I realize, I'm kind of checked out and just in autopilot or kind of robotic. So then I slow down again and take another 10 minutes, 15 minutes to really kind of recenter around 10 a.m., make another cup of coffee around then, and then kind of ease on into the rest of the day from there. But yeah, that's probably what it looks like on the outside. I definitely have a practice, and it's laid out and methodical and pretty complex, but it's all like inner work. It's all sort of like what I'm doing in those times and how I'm kind of reorienting and the ways I do. And I hinted at it a little bit in that talk I gave, but yeah, I've come to notice, and my family's really come to notice what I'm like when I don't do it. So they've been a huge encouragement. They'll say like, do you need to go away? Do you need to go recenter? I think, maybe you need to go get some time to yourself. So it's become a big part of my life.
Was it an abrupt moment where you decided, oh, I need a thing called a practice, or did you evolve into it? Like, was there a time when it didn't happen and then it started? To tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, actually, I remember exactly when it started. I was hitting it really hard with touring. I was gone a ton. I was a anxious mess. And I remember thinking, I don't think I could even hold still if I tried. And I had, 15 minutes before I had to go to a radio interview. So I just sat in my hotel room. I turned the chair around. This was probably 10 years ago. I turned the chair around, or maybe 7 years ago. And I faced the window. It was this beautiful, it was Connecticut or something. And I could not quiet my mind. Everything was just like 5 lanes of rush hour traffic in my brain. And I set a timer because I was like freaking out. So I made myself sit there for probably 15, 20 minutes. And it was like akin to mental torture. It was horrible. And I remember thinking like, okay, I need to do more of this. And this is the first step of a 1,000-mile journey. And from there was no big clouds part moment. It was just a step-by-step evolution, I think, with some big like failures along the way. I remember I had a really bad show in New York in December of 2012, and I finished the show and went upstairs and made a long list of all the things that I noticed went wrong, inside and outside, practical things, and also like fears that came up. And then I had a really, really bad panic attack one time. Same thing, woke up the next day, made a long list, started putting like almost like a journalism like a journalistic approach to what the hell is happening inside of me, and trying to piece it together and try beta testing a lot of different practices, a lot of different truths and habits and all that stuff. And a lot of them would work a little bit, but I'd have to tweak it, and a lot of them would work not at all, and some of them would work great. So over the years, I'd say 7-8 years, I've gotten to the point where I'm starting to get into a rhythm of doing the same thing every day and every time. And I have recentering practices. I also have like in the moment practices to bring me back to my breath and bring me back to, those are like a lot more simple things that I could do, you know, even talking to you right now. I was doing them a lot on stage that day. I don't do a lot of public speaking. I was super nervous and feeling all kinds of things. And so I was doing some of those practices then. So it's definitely been an evolution. But yeah, I love thinking about it and talking about it.
That's great. You said that your family notices the difference, you know, when you're sort of centered and in your practice and when you're not. I'm curious about your crowd. Like Tom and I have talked about this before. Like my general crowd, when I start talking about disclosing that I have a morning practice and journal and gratitude, I have a lot of friends who are kind of like, what happened to Simon? Like, did you lose your mind? Like, you know, what does that have to, like, and then you go to boxing? Like, what does that have to do with boxing? And
yeah.
I'm just curious, like in your music crowd and your broader community, are people like, oh, Isaac, that's so awesome you do that? Or are they like, whoa, what happened to him?
I'd say 9 out of 10 people think I'm nuts. But 1 out of 10 usually lean forward and they say like, wait, how does it work? What do you do now? And when do you do what? And how, you know, it's rare that people are, you know, curious about it. But I know that the people that I've kind of resonated with and talked a lot about it are also people that are stuck and like looking to be more whatever, if it's more present or more tender or more kind or more grounded or more, you know, peaceful, whatever it is. Those are the people that tend to be hungry and actively looking for practices and for habits and for things that go, you know, way beyond a list of protocols and human rules that get you more presence. It's you know, it's so much more than that. And those tend to be the people that that are interested. As far as the crowd goes, you know, I think of, you know, either my family or some of my close friends, and then my audience too. When I'm on stage singing, they're the ones. They're not necessarily asking me how I practice, but they are the ones that notice first when I'm off, especially in like a rock show. I mean, the whole crowd will literally just sit down, and like I've been in moments where I would say I'm really shut down and I'm not breathing very much and I'm afraid of something and I'm freaking out and I'm starting to spin up. I've had moments where I look over and the front row is like sitting down, talking to each other. I take out my in-ear monitor, you know, in some of those moments, like I've been able to hear people being like, so how was work? What did you do with Bob's report? And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm dying right now. And then when I'm, you know, in the moment, I'm not thinking about what they think of me and creating that feedback loop. I am just giving and receiving and touching and feeling and connecting, and lo and behold, no surprise, nobody's sitting down, nobody's talking about Bob's report, everybody's in the moment with me. So the crowds and my families, I have similar stories with my family and similar stories with my close friends. They play a huge role in signaling to me when I'm on, when I'm being myself. But yeah, it's a pretty rare thing. I got probably 10 people that I like sit with normally and talk and process. Like, what did you do when that's happened? And when that triggered you, what did you respond? Did it work? You know, those are the nerdy friends I have, like you guys.
Thanks, Isaac. Tom, do you want to say a word about any of that before I move toward closing and thanking Isaac?
Well, I think it's, you know, what I started thinking about when you were talking is football. Because I played football. I played football and played even in college a little bit. And I know my football friends can identify with the practices on game day, which, you know, like we wouldn't speak in the locker room. We were totally focused on the game. If we were on a bus somewhere, you know, you might be listening to your music. You're getting into the moment. You stretch, you tape. You're like prep. It's obvious, and we're all into it. And if you can just translate, like, that's basically what you're saying, you know, like how might you translate that to music or to life? You know, it's very straightforward that these kinds of ways of getting into these moments are huge. The other thing I was thinking as you were speaking was, and I said this before, but I'm going to highlight it again, which is when I think, because I am in the freaking show that I do, right, which is TNP, which is for 4 days, I am really in it, but not the way the crowd's in it. I'm like, the tech and the food and the lights and the show and the this and the that. And then there are these moments, these feelings, that's what they are. They're feelings that I have over the 10 years, and yours was one of those moments. And I think it relates to a lot of what you're saying. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was a risky thing you did. That was something you hadn't normally done. You certainly were out of your element in a certain way. And you could feel that. Am I right about those things?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I had a whole plan, and it went out the window. Yeah, I just went vulnerable.
yeah. Anyway, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
I think this analogy about practice and game day is really important. I think if we all would like to imagine you could show up on game day and be a world champion, but of course, if you didn't practice, then you won't be good on game day. And since this isn't just about our sporting events, it's about how we are since I know we all are dads and professionals and husbands and, people who serve the world and all the things we are. If we're not practicing something, we will do those things. We may have a good day because we have talent, right? But it's not sustainable excellence, right? Sustainable excellence comes because of the regular practice of the things that ground us and calm the mind and let us focus and see more clearly and be true to our purpose. And in a lot of ways, that's what this morning practice show is about, is how do we remember the essential preparation for living life the most fully we can. And so I'll just leave with this thought. I've said this last couple of days, and so I'm on this theme about choosing to versus having to. And just inviting all of us to, as we go through our days, think about when that voice comes up that's like, oh, I have to make dinner for the kids. Instead, how different is it when it's like, oh, I actually choose tonight to make dinner for my kids and sit and have dinner with them. Or, Isaac, you could have felt like, oh, I have to sit here and listen to their teacher because they're not at school, they're at home. But instead it's like, oh, what a gift. I get to sit here with my kids and their teacher. And so that isn't just about the easy stuff. I think that's about the hard stuff too, that we have a lot more choice than we sometimes realize. And when you live your life in a choose to framework, not a have to framework, you're able to serve more openly, you're able to give more generously, and just be more content with the opportunities that present themselves. So Isaac, thank you so much for joining us today. Tom, as always, good to be with you. I look forward to seeing you again, Isaac, and thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thank you, Isaac. Thanks, Simon. Great to see you guys.